Hello, everybody. Welcome to Notorious Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm Notorious Cly, and we got leaks. Soul Flare Lightning is the upcoming main box, and Konami did a fantastic job of putting the new Galaxy Eye support on the front of the box, because I feel like that buries the lead, or at least buries the thing that everybody's most interested in, which I guess is burying the lead. Because Orchest is coming to Duel Links, and pretty much everything is coming. There's some key cards that are missing, but we'll probably talk about them when we broke down the cards. So let's talk about all the new stuff that's coming, and I can give you my ill-informed and terrible takes on everything. So first, Compulse, fantastic. No longer selection box locked. Love it. Love to see powerful cards become accessible to the masses. Love having an even playing field for those who aren't able to financially contribute to the game or aren't lucky enough to, pull it with gems. So always love to see that. Also, Security Dragon, no longer selection box locked. Not as powerful or as unique or as versatile as Compulse, but still nice to see it no longer be locked behind a soft paywall, essentially. Next up, I think I want to talk about Kurikara Div Incarnate first, because this is a very interesting card and a card I'm very surprised to see come to Duel Links. Kurikara Div Incarnate, hereby referred to as Kurikara, cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by tributing all face-up monsters on the field that activated their effects this turn in your opponent's monster zones. Gains 1500 attack for each monster tributed to special summon this card. During your end phase, you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field. You can only use this effect of Kurikara Div Incarnate once per turn. So this is a card that is currently seeing high-level meta play in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. And that has got a lot of people excited, worried, nervous, hype, lots of things, all kinds of emotions surrounding this card. And I think one thing that some of the people who are really excited and hyped about this card are overlooking is TCG does not always translate to Duel Links. We know that, especially given a few things. First and foremost, Kurikara Div Incarnate was not always an incredibly powerful card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. It was very format dependent. It took months, almost, I think like 6 or 8 months after this card's release for it to even see play. Everybody knew it would eventually be good, but it was a matter of when it would be good. Because Kurikara is just a really slow kaiju, but you get to keep the monster. You're tributing off all of your opponent's monsters that activated their effect during this turn, which is good. You get to get rid of the monsters. But sometimes it is way more beneficial to just remove the monsters your opponent has before they have the ability to activate their effects. So it's very format dependent on when this card is going to be good. I think the same is going to be true for Duel Links. I think this card is also a little worse in Duel Links because we do not have a main phase 2. So in the TCG, you have your main phase 1. You could bait out some of your opponent's interaction, force them to activate their monster's effects, so then you can use Kurikara to tribute it off. And you don't have to bait all your opponent's monster's effects, just enough so you can get Kurikara on the field, and then use Kurikara in the battle phase to go ahead and beat over whatever's left, or bait the rest of their interaction, and then proceed to main phase 2 and set up. We don't have that luxury in Duel Links. So Kurikara's playability is going to depend on, 1, the type of board that your opponent is setting up, 2, the types of boards that your opponents are setting up coming to the metagame, because most of us are just going to be playing on the ranked ladder, so we're going to see a wide variety of decks. It's a little less narrow than the TCG. And then 3, it's also going to depend on how well your deck can bait out interaction, and then how well your deck can continue to play after baiting out that interaction. Because odds are most of us will be able to bait out some interaction, like, for example, me, Resonators, Mech Knights, all that kind of stuff. Mech Knight Resonators. If I normal summon Red Sprinter, that's going to prompt a response from my opponent. If not, eventually, Crimson Resonator or one of the big removal Dark Dragon Synchros I put on the board is going to bait their interaction. And then that would be a fantastic time to use Kurikara, because then I can tribute off their monster and punish them for interacting with me. But I've already used my normal summon. I don't have a ton of spam ability, a ton of ability to flood the board. So my ability to capitalize on Kurikara is a little limited. If I'm playing Mech Knight Resonators, probably a little better if I can set up a column somewhere along the way of baiting out my opponent's interaction, because then I got Kurikara plus the big body Mech Knights to hopefully just swing for game. But another thing to consider too is Kurikara doesn't do anything against back row. So yeah, you can get rid of the monsters, but you still have to address back row. So yeah, Kurikara is going to be very dependent on a lot of things. I definitely think this is a card worth keeping your eye on. And if you are going to go through this box for any one of the other archetypes or specific cards, just add to your collection, Kurikara will be a nice one to have because a really slow kaiju that gives you a big beater on your side of the board is still fantastic. And the ability to special something from your opponent's graveyard during the end phase is also fantastic. It means you can remove a key piece of their follow-up, and now they can't follow up. And even if you weren't able to finish out the duel with Kurikara plus whatever else you had left, hopefully you've put them in a position where they won't be able to come back. So, very good card. Going to be very dependent on what's being played, how it's being played, and your deck's ability to take advantage of what Kurikara represents and presents and brings to the table. So, still very excited that Konami is willing to evaluate cards that were printed very recently and see if they're a good fit for the format. One of the things I love about Duel Links the most is the restricted card pool, because it just opens up so many different options and possibilities and playability and viability for different cards, archetypes, decks. So it's really cool to see them look at Kurikara and be like, you know what? This doesn't break the format. I know we printed it like 8 months ago. But let's add it anyways. I think they did the same thing with Grand Tusk Dragon. I think Grand Tusk Dragon was a pote card, Power of the Elements, for those who aren't familiar with TCG. Look it up, crazy set. One of the most busted sets ever printed in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! It will be looked at and remembered fondly by those who played the archetypes in that set, and miserably by everybody who had to play against those archetypes and decks and cards in that set. So definitely one of the defining sets of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Kurikara Divincarnate. I wouldn't go out of my way to get Kurikara because you can always come back and get it when you need it. But if you're going to end up, digging through this box for other stuff and you're like 7 packs left and Kurikara is in the last 7 packs, I would probably just pull the last 7 packs just so you have access to Kurikara. I wouldn't intentionally forego getting Kurikara. It may be incredibly good one day. It just depends on a lot of outlying circumstances and also how power creep Duel Links gets, because if we get to big build-a-board type Duel Links formats and metas, Kurikara could become amazing. Next up, let's not bury the lead anymore. Teased Konami for doing that by putting Galaxy Eye support on there. Let's talk about Orcust. So Orcust, we have a lot of their support coming, which is something that Orcust players have been begging for forever. Some of the key issues with Orcust, as they've existed in Duel Links up until this point, is they have a hard time putting Orcust names in grave. In addition to that, the payoffs for putting your Orcusts in grave have been a little underwhelming. They've gotten better ever since the addition of links and more and more powerful generic monsters, specifically dark monsters. But I think we're going to address the payoff problem with the stuff that's coming. Still a little nervous about the ability to put Orcusts in graveyard, but that's going to require a lot more toying around and playtesting for me before I can give you like an educated take on Orcust's viability and combo ability and all that nonsense. Let's talk first about Dingirsu. Dingirsu is a generic rank 8 monster, Dark Machine. Hooray, Blue Eye support, Galaxy Eye support, I guess in a roundabout way. But let's read its effects and we'll talk about why it's great for Orcust. You can only special summon Dingirsu, the Orcust of the Evening Star, once per turn. Very odd to see a extract monster have a limit on how often you can special summon it. But we'll get to why that's important and why that's very crucial in a second here. You can also XYZ summon this card by using an Orcust Link monster you control as material. That's why you need to limit how often you can summon it. If a card you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can attach one material from this card instead. If this card is special summoned, you can activate one of these effects. Send one card your opponent controls to the graveyard. Attach one of your banished machine monsters to this card as material. It has 2,600 attack and 2,100 defense, which is fantastic when you consider you're just going to be overlaying it on top of an Orcust Link monster in Orcust. Fantastic card. Sending to the graveyard is incredibly powerful. You all know how much I love Dark End Dragon, and Dingirsu gets to do the same thing. A little worse because it has to be on special summon, but still incredibly powerful in the context of Orcust. We'll get to that in a second. It has protection for itself and essentially any other card you control. And then it has the ability to grab one of your Orcusts from banished, and if you find a way to put Dingirsu in the graveyard, the material it has also goes to the graveyard. So it can reset some of your Orcust monsters to the graveyard, where you can set them up for next turn or proc their effects if you haven't already this turn. Fantastic card. Fantastic card. So the goal of Orcust, at least as it appears in Duel Links at the moment, is going to be to set up a board where you will be able to special summon Dingirsu on your opponent's turn at quick effect speed. You're going to do this via Galatea searching Babel, the new field spell that was added to the card trader. And Babel allows you to activate all of your Orcust Link monsters' effects at quick effect speed, and also activate all of your Orcust monsters in graveyard effects at quick effect speed. And if you remember some of our old friends, old band members, Orcust Symbol Skeleton can banish itself from the graveyard to special summon an Orcust monster from your graveyard. So Dingirsu is an Orcust monster. If you put Dingirsu in graveyard, you can go ahead and put it back on field at quick effect speed. It is important to remember that the summon of Dingirsu over the top of one of your Orcust Link monsters is treated as an XZ summon, which means you can legally bring it back from the graveyard via the Orcust effects or other means. So you could always do some like Call of the Haunted type shenanigans too. Not that I think that's good, but just throwing it out there. Just food for thought. So let's move to Galatea and then keep rolling with all the Orcust. So 2 effect monsters, including an Orcust monster, the Link 2 monster, Dark Machine. You know, all the Orcusts are. This Link card cannot be destroyed by battle. Alright, you can target one of your banished machine monsters, shuffle it into the deck, then you can set one Orcust spell trap directly from your deck. You can only use this effect of Galatea the Orcust Automaton once per turn. So fantastic. So over the course of the turn, you would put your Orcusts in the graveyard, banish them, make Galatea with the material that the banished Orcusts are allowing you to put on field, use Galatea to shuffle them back in, set Babel, activate Babel, and then now Babel lets you go ahead and do the Dingirsu setup that we just talked about. I have some thoughts about that combo and Orcust viability, but I want to finish talking about the cards before I put a bow on it. Also worth noting that Babel will allow Galatea to go ahead and use its effect on your opponent's turn to shuffle back one of your banished Orcusts and set it as a spell or trap. I don't think we have fantastic targets for that on your opponent's turn, but it is nice that you can grab something for follow-up. Something like Orchestrated Return, I believe is the draw spell. If you can set an Orchestrated Return on your opponent's turn basically for free and turn an Orcust monster you control into graveyard material, plus a draw 2, plus for your turn you get to draw a card, drawing 3 cards on your next turn. Pretty fantastic. Really good for follow-up, and I think it's probably the best target we have. I could be mistaken. Again, I'm not an Orcust expert. I'm just familiar enough with them to give you some thoughts and takes and maybe a different perspective on them. So Galatea, fantastic card. Fantastic card for Orcust. Orcust Crescendo is their Omni Negate counter trap. It's not coming to Duel Links. Thank you, Konami. You learned your lesson with Salamangreat, specifically Salamangreat Roar. Having an accessible Omni Negate, not good at all for the game. Not very good at all for the game. Some thoughts on that too, because we have archetypes that don't get an Omni Negate, but they did get a big Saki blowout card that's searchable. But I'm sure all of you know my feelings on that by now. Next up is Longirsu. Longirsu is a Link 3 Dark Machine monster. Cool, 2500 attack. This Link card cannot be destroyed by card effects. Cool. You can target 2 of your banished machine monsters, shuffle them into the deck. Then you can send 1 Link monster your opponent controls to the graveyard. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. You can only use the effect of Longirsu, the Orchestrator, once per turn. Seems bad at first because you need to send 1 linked monster your opponent controls, but then you realize that Longirsu has arrows. I don't know if I'm pointing the right way. I think I'm flipped. So it has an up arrow and an up left arrow. I think I pointed the right way there. And that means it's going to point to 2 of the zones your opponent controls. So your opponent is essentially left playing around the potential arrows for Longirsu. I don't think Longirsu is going to be the correct goal for the turn 1 end board, but it is a decent turn 2 option. It's nice to have the sent to the graveyard. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about Orcust Nightmare. Konami did it. They did a fantastic job of limiting cards ahead of time to really make sure that we didn't get some busted stuff in Duel Links. So Orcust Nightmare is notable because it's an Orcust card and it's also a Nightmare card, which means you can special summon Orcust Nightmare from the deck off of Nightmare Mermaid's effect. But they limited Nightmare Mermaid to 1, which means we have to choose between Nightmare Mermaid and Babel. And if you're playing Nightmare Mermaid, you need a Nightmare card, which means you need to play Nightmare Crypta Ibli. They put Nightmare Crypta Ibli to 3, which means you're locked off of generic spells and generic limit 3 staples like Compulse, IDP, all the powerful stuff we know. They actually did a fantastic job of balancing this. If they left Ibly and Nightmare Mermaid untouched, I think we would be in trouble. But since they didn't do that, I think they've brought Orcust down to a decent level. I'm not quite sure yet how competitively viable Orcust will be, but I think it'll be good. I don't know if they're going to rip apart the meta yet, though. I really need to get in there and start labbing more before I can make that kind of guess, assumption, or take. Orcust Nightmare cannot be destroyed by battle with Link Monster. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one face-up monster on the field. You cannot special summon monsters except for dark monsters for the rest of this turn. Also, send one dark machine monster from your deck to the graveyard, except Orcust Nightmare. And if you do, the targeted monster gains attack equal to the level of the monster sent to the graveyard times 100 till the end of this turn. You can only use this effective Orcust Nightmare once per turn. So Orcust Nightmare is fantastic because if you can get it onto the field via one of your Orcust's effect, or if you want to go the Nightmare route via Nightmare Mermaid, you can then link it off for something like Galatea, and then use Orcust Nightmare to go ahead and get more material on board. Orcust Nightmare is such an important combo piece for the deck. It offers a lot of extension and a lot of ability to set up your banish pile and graveyard the way you need it. So really powerful card, but I think Konami did a halfway decent job of balancing around, adding Orcust Nightmare to the game. So good on them. Then the Orcust Spell Traps, I don't think we really need to talk too much about them. They're not fantastic. Orchestrated Attack requires your opponent to declare an attack. Orchestrated Core gives some protection, which is alright, I suppose. But you have to banish a monster on your field or graveyard, which means you have to have setup for it. And then what was the other one? Orchestrated Release just allows you to tribute monsters to cycle one back from the graveyard, which I guess is alright if you're trying to get specific materials on board, but I don't really know if those change the fate of Orcust itself, and I don't know if those are fantastic targets for Galatea at all. It looks like the primary target for Galatea is going to be Babel, just so you can set up the quick effect Dingirsu send from graveyard. So that's Orcust. We also got some reprints in here for Orcust. We got World Legacy World 1, which is also a very important piece of the puzzle for Orcust and their turn 1 setup. At least that's what it appears to be right now. And I think there is some other names in here too. Symbol Skeleton. And I don't think we got any of the high rarity ones. Funny. So thoughts on Orcust? Pretty decent. Being able to set up a quick effect send on your opponent's turn seems pretty good. Seems really good when you consider that they can do it with pretty good efficiency, using only like 1 or 2 cards, which means they have 2 other cards to play with. And getting to Galatea means you can just always get Babel from your deck. You don't need to open it, which is fantastic. And if you do open it, no big deal. You just grab one of the other Orcust spell traps that help round out your board. The builds I've seen float around with Orcust right now are playing Scrap Recycler. Let's pull up old Scrappy. Scrap Recycler, when it's normal summoned, you can send one machine monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then once per turn you can shuffle 2 level 4 Earth machines. Never going to happen because you're playing Orcust because it's dark machine type monsters. But the important thing is that you can Foolish Burial on normal summon, which means you can send one of your Orcusts to the graveyard to get the ball rolling. That's great. That's fantastic. Really cool. But it seems to be the only normal summon that starts plays on its own. So the question becomes, what happens when you don't open Scrap Recycler? Like, how do you get your play started? How do you get the ball rolling? That's the Orcust problem. Always has been. Is like, how do you get enough names in rotation in your graveyard to make the plays you need to make? I still need to test and play around with Orcust a little bit more to see if there's some ways you can do it, or to see if the combination of cards we already have, now that there's better payoffs and more searchable extenders and playmakers for the deck, to see if those fix that issue. But that would be the only thing I'm nervous about, is like, if the deck is Scrap Recycler or Bust, you're in trouble. One thing you can do is run, not Skinball Skeleton, Brass Bombard is a level 1, and we have Link Rebo now. So you can normal Brass Bombard, special Link Rebo, and that puts Brass Bombard in graveyard, and I believe Brass Bombard specials from hand. So that gives you the ability to put 2 on board if you just open 2 Orcust names, which fantastic because Galatea only requires an Orcus monster, just one. So Link Rebo plus Orcus name that you're special summoning off Breast Marmored means you get to Galatea, which means you get to Babble, which means you might be able to set some stuff up. So yeah, that's another way you can work around not opening Scrap Recycler, but we'll have to see what's going on with that. The one of the most obvious normal summons for this deck is Nightmare Corruptor Ibly, just because you can go Ibly into Mermaid, pitch a card, hopefully an Orcus, and then special Orcus Nightmare from deck. But again, with Nightmare Mermaid being limited to one, you're stuck choosing between having the Ibly lock be the primary focus of your turn one setup, or playing Babble instead and having the Dingirsu Sen be part of your primary turn one setup. So fantastic job of balancing, and I'm curious to see which route the deck evolves and branches off and goes to. I think I missed one Orcus card. Let's talk about Orchestrition. Good card. Requires a lot of setup, but overall it's a half a decent card. If you get to the point where you're making Orchestrition, you're probably winning anyways. So I guess that makes it not that good of a card anyways. Plus there's probably better, Link 4 payoffs. This won't be part of Orcus turn one board, but it might be an option for newer players to have, just so they don't have to dig for other more generic options. Requires 2+ effect monsters, including an Orcus monster, so it's cool that you can use a Link 3 plus an Orcus to get into Orchestration. And then this Link card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Cool, whatever. You can target 3 of your banished machine monsters, shovel them into the deck. That's what I'm talking about. It requires a lot of setup. Needs 3 banished, plus it's a Link 4. So that's a whole lot of cards in rotation. And if you do, the attack and defense of any Link monsters your opponent controls currently becomes 0. Also, their effects are negated. You can only use this effect of Orchestration once per turn. So if you set this up with Babble on the field, Orchestration has 2 arrows. I think I'm pointing the right way again. As an up arrow and an up right arrow, which means if you put it in your left extra monster zone, I think this will be the extra monster zone for you guys watching on camera, means you can basically wall off your opponent's ability to play with effect monsters in 2 of their zones. So because they will be linked to Orchestration. Again, don't really know how good it is. Probably won't see play, but its effect is pretty good. It just requires too much setup to really be fantastic or great. You all are incredibly lucky. You are going to get 2 Soulflare Lightning box breakdowns. One with Orcus and then one without Orcus, because I've looked at the time I've been recording, and it's going pretty long. And I don't want this to drawn on too long so people tune out. So I think we're going to end this video right here. Please stay tuned for the rest of the Soulflare Lightning box assessment breakdown, whatever. And I'll see you all in that video. Be safe, have fun, everybody.